Hey folks, James Abrenio coming to you from Abrenio Law, your Northern Virginia personal injury and criminal defense law firm. In this video, I want to talk about a call that I've been getting a lot, or calls I've been getting a lot about potential medical malpractice claims. Oftentimes, I'll get called from either an individual patient or their family telling me about some horrific circumstance that they experienced at the hand of a healthcare provider or at a hospital or at some other facility. And they want to sue for medical malpractice, understandably, because they've been subjected to pain, suffering, treatment, medical bills, and other instances that they feel that, but for the negligence and misbehavior of a medical professional, they shouldn't have had to gone through, and it's been horrific. And I can certainly understand the concern there. Unfortunately, I think medical malpractice happens every day throughout the country. It's a real issue. Doctors, while I respect them and I understand they have a very difficult job, and I think most of them are good-hearted, and in order to do that work, you've got to have a sense of goodness in you, in my view. They make mistakes just like anybody else, just like lawyers, for instance. So I believe that malpractice happens a lot. But the question is, even if malpractice happens, number one, can you prove it? And number two, does it make sense to pursue it? So this video is really kind of a general discussion about how I view medical malpractice claims when they come into my office. People ask about whether or not I can represent them on a malpractice case and whether or not it makes sense to go forward. So I just want to start this off as a caveat. If I say to you, hey, look, I'm not recommending that you go forward. I'm not recommending that I can take you on as a client. I'm not saying that you don't have a claim. I'm not saying that malpractice didn't happen. It could be that I think that the viability of proving fault and negligence is going to be difficult. It could be that while I'm absolutely certain that you went through a negligent behavior, perhaps the damages, meaning the injuries that you had, weren't to the level to where I think it warrants investing the time and money going into a malpractice case. And what I'll say about that, just as a start, malpractice cases are inherently very risky and inherently very, very expensive. So let's talk about why is it risky on the negligence liability side, proving somebody would actually commit a malpractice. Well, Virginia law doesn't require that doctors be perfect. In fact, they can mess up. The question is whether or not, to a reasonable degree of medical probability within the specialty that they're acting in, did they fall below the standard of care? Did they act unreasonably for another reasonable doctor in that position, in that specialty? Because even if they weren't perfect, if they didn't fall below the standard of care, your case is going to be very difficult to win. And what that means inherently is you have to have a doctor that matches the specialty of the doctor or provider that injured you. They can say to a reasonable degree of medical probability in court that they fell below the standard of care. That's complicated. It's hard. Another complicating factor is doctors, especially doctors that know each other, don't like testifying against each other. So oftentimes Virginia doctors are going to know each other. So if you've got a malpractice case here in Virginia, the doctor, getting a doctor to say that you messed up is going to be difficult to get somebody locally. So oftentimes I'll have somebody that's gotten treatment. It appears that there was malpractice that happens. They'll go to a second doctor. That doctor will say, yeah, this was clearly malpractice. But then when I ask them, can you help out in our case? They're not so willing to do it because they know, Dr. Smith or Dr. Jane, and they don't want to have to see them around the local association meeting, so they decline. So oftentimes, in many instances, we as plaintiffs' attorneys have to go to California or New York or Pennsylvania or some other state where there's no connection. And look, I want to be as little cynical about this as possible, but the reality is people know each other, and it's just hard to do that. Okay, it's hard to testify against your friends and colleagues. But if we ignore that fact, then I think you're not recognizing the seriousness of the situation. One of the other reasons proving liability can be so difficult is reaching the standard of care violation level can be very difficult. Doctors are insured by insurance companies. Doctors don't like to admit fault, and they're usually going to deny liability, even in very straightforward cases. And they're usually going to be able to find a doctor that says, yeah, this was not below the standard of care, or The patient's anatomy was unusual, or there was an unforeseen event, or this was a known risk. And they're going to come up with a whole host of things as to why the doctor or the medical provider that hurt you was not negligent, did not commit malpractice. The whole industry is set up to defend them. So you have to recognize that even if you think you have a straightforward case, even if you think your doctor did something wrong, unless you have a absolute clear picture and theory of the malpractice, since you can give an elevator speech and you have a doctor supporting it, I can tell you your case is going to be very difficult and it's going to be very risky. The other thing is to realize the more complicated your injury is and the more complicated the liability story is, it only gets more complicated through litigation. So your claim is going to be pristine when you bring it, but as you litigate it, it's going to be muddied as the defense attorneys and doctors are trying to come at you and your expert witnesses and your other witnesses. So recognize that original theory, that original claim that you have, it's only going to get harder to tell as you go through litigation. Now, that's the liability side. Can you prove that they commit a malpractice? The other aspect of it is the damages in your case. Does it justify the investment? Now, this part of the discussion is going to sound a bit cold and forensic, but my job as plaintiff's counsel and malpractice counsel is to take the emotion out of it and help you make an informed decision. Whether or not something is out of principle and, hey, I just want to pursue this because it's the right thing to do, I get that. But in order to pursue a malpractice case, you're going to have to invest time and you're going to have to invest in money to go after a doctor, usually in the tens of thousands of dollars, 50 grand, 80 grand. That's not unusual in a malpractice case. And so in order to justify that investment, I tell people, look, you have to take your emotion out of it and look at this malpractice case. In a lot of ways is an investment, just like a stock or a bond or a real estate investment. If you're going to put 50 grand or 80 grand into a case and you're going to spend 2 years in litigation, do I, as plaintiff's counsel, believe that I can get you a justifiable return on that investment? Because if I don't think I can get a return on investment, then I'm going to recommend that you not pursue it. So let's say you have a case that's worth 50 grand, and I think it's in a case that costs 50 grand in order to get that. Well, by the time I've taken my attorney's fees and you've invested that money, you've lost money. You've actually paid me. That assumes that we're successful. If we lose, you're not even recouping that from the damages. Let's say you have a case worth $100,000, and that's $100,000 is not a little bit of money, but let's say you've got to pay 50 or 100 grand. Well, again, the same analysis. I'm typically going to be charging my attorney's fees. You're going to have to pay the doctors and litigation costs. And again, there's still always that inherent risk of losing at trial. So the worst scenario is you lose at trial, and then all of a sudden there's an outstanding bill of $50,000 or $80,000. So you have to be concerned about that. And what that means in practice, unfortunately, is typically when I'm talking to people that have suffered malpractice and provable malpractice, I'm unfortunately saying to them, unless you suffered devastating permanent injury, it's probably not a case that I'm going to recommend making that investment in. And again, that may sound cold and forensic and take the emotion out, but what you're going to do is you're going to hate me if 2 years from now we end up unsuccessful or we don't get much money in your pocket even, and you've went through this devastating thing, and you don't see a whole lot on the back end. That also means that inherently, if I'm telling you that you have a case and I want to help you out, it's unfortunately going to be pretty tragic, because that means you've likely suffered a life-changing event, if not somebody died because of the result of the malpractice. So again, that kind of goes back to what I said in the opening part of this video. And again, this is not meant to address every aspect of a malpractice case. It's really just to talk generally about the general investigation that I do when I have people come in and ask me about malpractice cases. Is if I'm taking you on a client, that's a bad thing, meaning you've been fairly injured, fairly badly injured. Or if I'm turning you down and I'm saying, look, this is not a case that I'm going to recommend you pursuing, that usually means that, hey, hopefully that the injury is not so devastating to where you can move on. Now, again, I'm not trying to minimize the injury and pain that you went through, even if I turn you down. I'm not trying to pretend to understand where you're coming from, but I'm talking about from a financial perspective, because again, that's what I've got to do, is give you that advice from that perspective. So hopefully this video kind of helps you understand my thinking. It also helps you understand when you come to Abrenio law and we're not getting back to you right away, it's because we're making a true effort in trying to analyze, does this make sense for you to pursue this? Because once you commit to a case, once you start spending money, you have to take that very seriously. It's going to be time intensive. It's going to be financially intensive. And it's going to be obviously emotionally intensive. So hopefully this helps kind of address that concern. If you have more questions, make sure to reach out to Abrenio Law. You can reach us out at www.abreniolaw.com. You can give me a call, 703-570-4180. Look, if you're watching this video, either you or somebody in your life has been severely affected. And again, I don't mean to minimize that. And I'm sorry that you're going through what you're going through. And I'm sorry that I have to talk to you in such a forensic way. But again, I'd rather be upfront with you about the process rather than lead you on and make it sound much easier and much less painful than it will be. Because the last thing, again, I want to do is have you already gone through a malpractice situation. And then now I've brought you through this horrific litigation situation. The other thing is, look, I'm not the all-knowing force. Other attorneys see things differently. Other attorneys have different life experience and practice experience. And just because I say to you, look, it's not a case that I'm going to be able to take on, that doesn't mean that another attorney won't be able to take it on. Maybe they're seeing something that I don't. In fact, I hope that if I turn down your case, you call me in a year or two and you say, James, you just lost a bunch of money because I was able to find somebody to take on my case and they were able to be successful. Yes, I lost some income, but I'd prefer you to get the outcome that you needed, that you wanted, and that you deserved. And hopefully at the end of the day, my main goal, of course, I've got to make money as a business, but my main goal is to make sure that individuals that contact me get the outcomes they need. So regardless of whether or not I'm able to help you out, I do wish you the best. Thanks.